Ambassador Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the small window of the transport ship. She had seen many amazing things in her 50 years of life, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The Galaxy Council station stretched out before them like a small moon made of metal and crystal. Lights blinked across its surface in patterns she could not understand. Ships from hundreds of different worlds moved around it like insects around a bright lamp. "First time seeing it?" asked Dr. Marcus Chun, the human science advisor. He sat beside Elena, his hands shaking slightly as he checked his tablet for the 100th time. "Yes," Elena said. "It is much bigger than the pictures showed." Captain Sarah Kim, their military advisor, snorted from across the cabin. "Big does not always mean better. Sometimes it just means slow and hard to move." Elena smiled. Sarah always found the negative side of things, but her careful thinking had saved them many times before. The three humans made up Earth's first official delegation to the Galaxy Council. After 2 years of talks through messages sent across space, they were finally going to meet face to face. Their ship shook gently as it moved into the docking bay. Elena felt her stomach flip. She had been a diplomat for 20 years, but this was different. This was not just about trade deals or border disputes between human colonies. This meeting would decide humanity's place in the galaxy. The docking bay was enormous. Their small ship looked like a toy next to the massive vessels around them. Some ships were made of materials that seemed to bend light. Others floated without any visible engines. One ship near them looked like it was made of living coral that pulsed with soft blue light. "Remember," Elena said to her team as they prepared to leave the ship, "we are here to learn and to represent all of humanity. Stay calm, be respectful, but do not agree to anything without talking to me first." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. The air that rushed in smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. 3 beings waited for them in the corridor. Beyond, the first being was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through its body in slow waves. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Welcome, humans of Earth. I am Zar Kentvel of the Zephyrian people. I will guide you to the council chamber." The second being floated in a clear tank filled with purple gas. Its form shifted and changed like smoke. When it spoke, the words came from speakers built into the tank. "I am Wismore Neth of the Nethic Collective. We are honored by your presence." The third being looked almost human, but its skin was pale blue, and its eyes were completely black. "I am Coordinator Thane of the Diplomatic Corps. We will help you understand our ways." Elena bowed slightly. "I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez. These are my advisors, Dr. Chun and Captain Kim. We thank you for this opportunity." As they walked through the station, Elena tried not to stare at the incredible sights around them. Beings of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Some walked on legs like humans. Others floated or slithered or moved in ways she had never imagined. The walls themselves seemed alive, covered in patterns that shifted and changed. "The Galaxy Council has maintained peace for over 3,000 years, Coordinator Thane explained as they walked. "We represent 847 different species across millions of worlds." "How do you manage so many different peoples?" Dr. Chun asked. The crystal being, Zar Kentvel, made a sound like gentle laughter. "Through the wisdom of compliance, young human. All species learn to follow the same basic rules. It makes everything much simpler." Elena felt a small chill at those words, but she kept her expression neutral. The council chamber was vast beyond imagination. Thousands of beings sat in curved rows that rose up like the inside of a giant bowl. At the center, 5 massive seats held the most important council members. Elena and her team were led to a small platform in the middle of the floor. High Arbiter Zeltherin of the Zephyrians rose from the central seat. The crystal being was twice as tall as any human, and light pulsed through its body like a slow heartbeat. When it spoke, its voice filled the entire chamber. "People of Earth, called humans, you stand before the Galaxy Council as a young species, seeking membership in our great community. For 3,000 years, we have brought peace and order to the galaxy. We have ended wars, prevented disasters, and guided young species to wisdom. Elena stepped forward. High Arbiter, we are honored to be here. Humanity seeks friendship and cooperation with all peaceful species. Yes, yes, the High Arbiter said, waving one crystalline hand. All young species say such things. But friendship requires understanding. Cooperation requires rules. You cannot simply do whatever you wish in a galaxy with so many different peoples. A new voice spoke from Elena's left. She turned to see a being that looked like a giant spider, made of metal. The humans are very young, it clicked in mechanical tones. Their technology is primitive. Their social structures are chaotic. They fight wars among themselves. How can such a species be trusted with the freedom of full membership? Murmurs rose from the thousands of beings in the chamber. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she forced herself to stay calm. We admit that humanity has made mistakes, she said clearly, but we have also learned from them. We have ended most wars on our world. We work together now to explore space and build a better future. The High Arbiter's light pulsed brighter. This is exactly why we have developed the Standard Compliance Package. It has been used successfully with hundreds of species. It will help humanity avoid the mistakes that young species always make. Coordinator Thane stepped forward with a device that projected a holographic document into the air. The terms are quite reasonable, he said. First, all human military vessels and weapons must be surrendered to Council control. This prevents unfortunate conflicts. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Captain Kim stepped closer to her side. Second, Thane continued, human resource extraction and production must be limited to Council-approved quotas. This ensures that resources are shared fairly across all species. Third, the human population must be relocated from 60% of currently occupied worlds. These worlds will be reserved for species with greater needs or longer Council membership. Dr. Chun made a small choking sound. Elena put a steadying hand on his arm. Fourth, all humans must undergo genetic modification to reduce aggressive tendencies. This has proven very successful with other young species. And finally, the High Arbiter said, its voice booming across the chamber, human technological development must be supervised by Council advisors. This prevents the creation of dangerous or disruptive innovations. The chamber fell silent. Elena felt the weight of thousands of alien eyes upon her. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her voice was steady when she spoke. High Arbiter, these terms are quite comprehensive. My government will need time to consider them carefully. Of course, the High Arbiter said, and Elena could hear amusement in its chiming voice. Young species always need time to understand what is best for them. You have 72 of your hours to decide. But know this, no species has ever refused Council membership. The alternative is isolation, economic collapse, and eventual absorption anywhere. The galaxy is too large and dangerous for any species to survive alone. We understand, Elena said. We will use the time wisely. As they were led from the chamber, Elena caught sight of several beings in the audience who looked different from the rest. Their postures seemed defeated, their eyes empty. One being, covered in gray fur, looked directly at her. For just a moment, she saw something in its eyes, a warning, or perhaps a plea. Back in their guest quarters, the three humans sat in stunned silence. Finally, Captain Kim spoke. They want to neuter us completely. Take our ships, our worlds, our very nature. Dr. Chun nodded slowly. The genetic modification alone would change what it means to be human. Elena stared out the window at the stars beyond the station. Somewhere out there, Earth waited for her answer. Billions of humans trusted her to make the right choice. We need to learn more, she said quietly. Something is not right here. Did you see those beings in the audience? Some of them looked like prisoners, not partners. What are you thinking? Sarah asked. Elena turned back to her team. I am thinking that we need to understand what compliance really means before we give our answer. Elena could not sleep. She stood by the window in their guest quarters, watching the endless stream of ships moving around the council station. Each one represented a different world, a different species that had accepted the council's terms. She wondered how many of them had been given the same choice humanity now faced. Dr. Chun sat at the table behind her, his tablet glowing in the dim light. He had been reading for hours, going through every document the council had provided about membership. "Elena," he said quietly, "I found something strange in the historical records." She turned from the window. "What is it?" "The Cathari civilization. According to this, they were a spacefaring species with colonies on 47 worlds when they joined the council 200 years ago. But look at this current population report." Elena moved to look over his shoulder. The numbers made her frown. "They only control 3 worlds now? What happened to the other 44? The council relocated them for resource management and population control. It says here the Cathari were grateful for the guidance." Captain Kim looked up from where she had been cleaning her sidearm. "Grateful to lose most of their worlds? That does not sound right." Dr. Chung scrolled through more documents. "It is the same pattern with dozens of species. They start with many worlds, then after joining the council, their territory shrinks dramatically. The council calls it optimization." Elena felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "Show me the genetic modification records." The files painted an even darker picture. Species after species had undergone what the council called evolutionary guidance. Aggressive tendencies removed, competitive instincts reduced, creative impulses limited to approved channels. "Look at this," Dr. Chun whispered, pointing to a medical report. "The Vreks were apparently highly innovative before joining. They created art, music, and technology that impressed even the older species. But after genetic modification, their cultural production dropped by 90%. They turned them into worker drones," Sarah said bluntly. A soft chime sounded from their door. Elena quickly closed the tablet as Coordinator Thane entered, his pale blue face wearing what might have been a smile. "Good evening, humans. I hope you are finding your accommodations satisfactory." "Very comfortable, thank you," Elena replied. "We appreciate the council's hospitality." "Excellent. The High Arbiter wanted me to check on your deliberations." "Do you have any questions about the membership package?" Elena chose her words carefully. "We were curious about the relocation requirements. 60% seems like a significant portion of our territory." Thane nodded enthusiastically. "Oh yes, quite significant. But you must understand, humans currently occupy worlds that were designated for other purposes long before your species developed space travel. Zephyrians, for example, need crystal-rich worlds for their reproduction cycles. The Nephic require gas giant systems for their energy needs. Your species is quite adaptable. You can live almost anywhere. It makes sense to move you to less specialized worlds." "And the worlds we would be moved to?" Dr. Chun asked. "Perfectly adequate for human needs. Slightly smaller, perhaps, with more limited resources, but the council will provide everything you require through our distribution networks." Elena felt her jaw tighten. "What about the genetic modifications? Why are they necessary?" Thane's expression became more serious. This is always difficult for young species to understand. Humans are remarkably aggressive, even by galactic standards. Your history is filled with wars, conflicts, even sporting competitions designed around combat metaphors. Such tendencies cause problems in a peaceful galactic community. But aggression can also drive innovation and exploration," Sarah said. "It is not all negative." "That is exactly the kind of thinking the modifications will help you overcome," Thane said kindly. "Aggression may seem useful to a young species, but it causes far more problems than it solves. Trust me, humans will be much happier once those troublesome instincts are removed." After Thane left, the 3 humans sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Elena spoke. "We need to talk to some of the species that have already joined. I want to hear from them directly what membership really means." "How?" Sarah asked. I doubt the council will arrange meetings with dissatisfied members, Elena smiled grimly. Then we will have to be creative. The next morning, Elena told Coordinator Thane that the human delegation would like to tour the station's cultural district. To better understand galactic civilization, he seemed delighted by the request and arranged for them to visit several areas where different species lived and worked. Their first stop was a section designed for aquatic species. Massive tanks filled with various liquids housed beings that swam, floated, or drifted through their artificial environments. Elena watched a group of what looked like jellyfish creatures moving in complex patterns. "Are those the Dalvani?" she asked their guide, a young council staffer. "Yes, they create beautiful art through movement. They have been members for 400 years. Elena noticed that all the Dalvani moved in exactly the same patterns. There was no variation, no individual expression. When she pointed this out, the guide seemed confused, but why would there be variation? They have perfected the optimal movement sequences. Individual differences would only create disharmony. In the next section, they met the Shathari, the species Dr. Chun had researched the night before. They looked like large cats that walked upright, covered in spotted fur. One of them was working on what appeared to be a mechanical device. Elena approached carefully. "Excuse me, I'm Ambassador Vasquez from Earth. Might I ask what you are building?" The Cathari looked up with large yellow eyes. "Standard Fabrication Unit 779. All Cathari build the same units now. Very efficient. Do you ever build anything different?" The Cathari tilted its head, looking confused. "Different? But this design is optimal. The council engineers determined this long ago. Why would we build something different?" Sarah tried a different approach. "Before joining the council, did your people build different things?" The Cathari's expression became distant, almost sad. Sometimes I have dreams about that time. Strange dreams of things that serve no optimal purpose. Flying machines shaped like birds, buildings that curved like music. But those were primitive times. We understand better now." As they walked away, Elena noticed the Cathari watching them with an expression she could not quite read. Later, when their guide was distracted, the creature approached them quietly. "You are the new species," it whispered. "The ones they call humans." "Yes," Elena said softly. "Be careful what you choose," the Cathari said, glancing around nervously. "Some of us remember what we lost, but most do not remember anymore. The modifications. They take away the sadness along with everything else." Before Elena could respond, the creature hurried away. That evening, Elena made a decision. She sent a carefully coded message to Earth, hidden within routine diplomatic communications. She told her government what they had learned and requested permission to establish contact with other species, who might still remember what they had lost. The response came 12 hours later, also coded. President Martinez gave her full authority to investigate further, but warned that several human colonies had reported unusual ship movements near their borders. The Council might already be preparing for humanity's refusal on their final day. Elena requested a private meeting with the High Arbiter. She was led to a massive chamber filled with floating crystals that hummed with harmonious tones. "Ambassador Vasquez," the High Arbiter said, its voice echoing through the crystal forest. "Have you reached a decision?" "We have many questions still," Elena said. "But I wanted to understand something. In 3,000 years, has any species ever refused council membership?" The High Arbiter's lights pulsed more slowly. "A few have tried. The result is always the same. Isolation leads to conflict with neighboring members. Economic problems follow. Eventually, they request membership under much less favorable terms. And if a species continues to refuse, that has never happened. The galaxy is too dangerous, too complex for any species to survive alone. Eventually, we are forced to intervene for their own protection." Elena nodded slowly. "I see. And the genetic modifications, are they reversible? Why would anyone want to reverse them?" "Our members are happier, more peaceful, more productive. The modifications eliminate suffering, conflict, and waste." They also eliminate choice. The High Arbiter moved closer, its crystal form towering over Elena. Choice is overrated, young human. Choice leads to mistakes, to conflict, to unnecessary suffering. We have eliminated those problems. That night, Elena called her team together one final time. They had all the information they needed. Tomorrow we give our answer, she said. Are we all agreed? Dr. Chen and Captain Kim nodded without hesitation. Then let us prepare for the consequences, Elena said. Because something tells me the Council will not accept our decision gracefully. Outside their window, the stars waited silently, holding secrets about the galaxy's true nature that the Council preferred to keep hidden. The Council chamber was even more crowded than before. Elena counted representatives from nearly 1,000 different species filling the curved rows that rose up around the central platform. Word had spread throughout the station that the humans would give their final answer today. Some beings had traveled from distant systems. Just to witness this moment, Elena stood on the platform with Dr. Chun and Captain Kim beside her. She wore her best diplomatic uniform, but her hands were steady as she held the datapad containing humanity's response. Behind her formal composure, her heart hammered against her ribs. High Arbiter Zeltherin descended from its towering seat, crystal body pulsing with slow waves of light. Around the chamber, thousands of alien eyes focused on the small group of humans at the center. Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the species called Humanity, the High Arbiter's voice rang through the vast space. You have had time to consider our generous offer of membership. What is your answer? Elena stepped forward. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of environmental systems and the distant sound of crystalline beings breathing. High Arbiter, honored members of the Galaxy Council, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the acoustic design of the chamber. We have studied your proposal carefully. We have spoken with many member species and learned much about what council membership means. She paused, looking up at the thousands of faces watching her. Some showed curiosity. Others displayed the blank contentment she had seen in the modified species. But scattered throughout the crowd, she spotted expressions of desperate attention, beings who still remembered what they had lost. We have come to understand that joining the council means giving up the right to make our own choices. It means surrendering our military, our worlds, our resources, and ultimately our very nature as human beings. A rumble of surprised voices swept through the chamber. The High Arbiter's lights flashed brighter. We appreciate the offer, Elena continued, but humanity must respectfully decline membership in the Galaxy Council. The chamber erupted. Thousands of beings began talking at once, their voices creating a wall of sound that made Elena's ears ring. Some species made clicking noises. Others produced sounds like music or machinery. The High Arbiter raised its crystalline arms, and slowly the noise died down. You refuse? The High Arbiter's voice carried disbelief. No species has ever refused council membership. You do not understand what you are saying. Elena's voice remained calm. We understand. Perfectly. You are asking us to stop being human. We cannot do that. Coordinator Thane appeared at the edge of the platform, his blue face flushed with confusion. Ambassador, surely you need more time to consider. This decision will affect your entire species for generations. Yes, it will, Elena agreed. That is exactly why we cannot accept. A new voice cut through the chamber. One of the spider-like beings Elena had seen before spoke in mechanical tones. The humans are clearly too primitive to understand their own interests. This proves they need council guidance immediately. Or immediate correction, added a creature that looked like a walking tree with too many arms. The High Arbiter raised a hand for silence. Ambassador Vasquez, you seem to believe that council membership limits freedom. This is not true. Our members enjoy perfect freedom within proper boundaries. They are free from war, from want, from the burden of making difficult choices. That is not freedom, Captain Kim said, speaking for the first time. That is a cage with comfortable walls. The High Arbiter's lights flashed angry red. You dare insult 3,000 years of galactic peace? Our system has prevented countless wars, eliminated poverty across hundreds of worlds, and brought order to chaos. Elena nodded. Your system has indeed created order, but the price is too high. You have created peace by removing the ability to choose conflict. You have eliminated poverty by controlling every resource. You have brought order by destroying everything that makes each species unique. Dr. Chun stepped forward. We met a Kithari yesterday who dreamed of building machines shaped like birds. Not because they were efficient, but because they were beautiful. Your system has taken that away from them, from all of them. Efficiency is beauty, the High Arbiter replied coldly. Purpose is beauty. Random creativity leads only to waste and confusion. Elena felt a surge of anger but kept her voice level. To humans, the ability to choose our own purpose is what makes life worth living, even if we sometimes choose poorly. Then you choose to be alone in a hostile galaxy? The High Arbiter said. You choose economic isolation, technological stagnation, and eventual extinction. Because that is what happens to species who refuse our guidance. Perhaps, Elena said. But we choose it freely. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. Before anyone could react, she pressed a button on its surface. What are you doing? Coordinator Thane demanded. Ensuring that our refusal is heard throughout the galaxy, Elena replied. This message is being broadcast on all frequencies in every major galactic language. The chamber exploded into chaos again. Security forces began moving toward the platform, but Elena raised her voice above the noise. People of the galaxy, she called out, knowing her words were being carried to millions of worlds. Humanity has been offered a choice. Join the Council and surrender our freedom, or stand alone and keep our right to choose our own path. We choose freedom. We choose to remain human. She looked directly at the High Arbiter. And we invite any species who remembers what they lost to remember that they too can choose. The security forces reached the platform, but Elena was not finished. The Council claims that no species can survive alone. Perhaps that is true. But no species should have to choose between survival and remaining themselves. As the security being surrounded them, Elena activated a second device. This one sent a coded signal to the human transport ship waiting in the docking bay. We will leave your station peacefully, she told the High Arbiter. But we will not surrender our humanity. For the illusion of safety. You are making a terrible mistake, the High Arbiter said, its voice now cold as space itself. Without Council protection, your species will face challenges you cannot imagine. Pirates, hostile species, resource wars, technological dead ends. We have saved countless civilizations from such fates. By making them forget who they were, Elena replied. That is not salvation, that is erasure. As the human delegation was escorted from the chamber, Elena caught sight of something that made her heart leap. Several beings in the audience were standing, not all of them, but enough to notice. A Kithari near the back had risen to its feet. 3 aquatic beings in their movement tanks had stopped their synchronized swimming. Even one of the crystal beings was pulsing with irregular light patterns. The message was spreading. During the tense walk back to their ship, Coordinator Thane tried one last time to change their minds. Ambassador, please reconsider. The Council is prepared to offer modified terms? Perhaps we could reduce the territorial requirements or delay the genetic modifications for a few generations. Elena stopped walking and turned to face him. Coordinator Thane, you still do not understand. This is not about the terms. This is about the principle. Humanity will not trade its freedom for security, no matter how attractive the offer. Then, you doom your species to struggle and suffering. We accept that risk, Elena said simply, because the alternative is not really living at all. Their ship launched from the Council station 30 minutes later, carrying the first species delegation ever to refuse membership. As they cleared the docking bay, Captain Kim reported something interesting. Elena, I'm picking up coded transmissions. Multiple species are sending messages to frequencies outside Council control. What kind of messages? Hard to tell, but some of them seem to be using human language patterns. I think your speech affected more beings than we saw. Elena looked back at the massive station shrinking behind them. Already, she could see Council security ships moving into formation. The siege of human space would begin soon. Set course for Earth, she told the pilot, and send a priority message ahead. Tell them that humanity chose to walk away from the table. Now we need to prepare for the consequences. As their ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, Elena wondered. How many other species were looking at the stars tonight and remembering what it felt like to be free? The real test would come when the Council tried to force compliance. But for now, humanity had taken the first step on a path no species had. Walked in 3,000 years, the path of defiance. Admiral Sarah Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the massive Council fleet take position around Earth. 3 months had passed since the walkout, and the Council's response had been swift and overwhelming. 200 warships now blockaded every major human colony, cutting off trade routes and demanding surrender. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "We are receiving another surrender demand from the Council flagship." "Same. Terms as before?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Yes, ma'am. Complete disarmament, relocation protocols, and immediate genetic modification of all humans. They say resistance is futile and will only lead to unnecessary suffering." Sarah looked out at the enemy fleet. Each Council ship was larger than anything humanity had ever built, covered in energy shields that made them nearly invulnerable to anti-IONAL weapons. The logical response would be to surrender, but humans had never been known for being logical. "Send our standard reply," she said. "Humanity declines the offer." On the planet below, President Martinez was meeting with the Emergency Council in the underground command center beneath Geneva. The faces around the table showed strain, but no one spoke of surrender. "Status report," Martinez said as Elena Vasquez entered the room. She had returned from her diplomatic mission to find herself appointed as humanity's special advisor on galactic affairs. "The blockade is holding firm," reported General Morrison. "No ships in or out of human space. Our outer colonies are starting to feel the resource shortage." "What about the other species?" Martinez asked Elena. "Any response to our broadcast?" Elena's tired face showed the first smile anyone had seen in weeks. "More than we hoped. The Cathari have begun what they call passive resistance. They are not following Council work quotas and have stopped producing military supplies. The Dalvani have started swimming in new patterns that the Council cannot control. And we have received coded messages from 17 other species requesting information about independence." Dr. Chun, now serving as Chief Science Advisor, looked up from his tablet. "The Council is calling it the human virus. They claim our ideas are spreading like a disease among their member species." "Good," President Martinez said firmly. "Maybe it is time the galaxy had an epidemic of free thinking." Above Earth's atmosphere, Captain Marcus Webb guided his small fighter through the asteroid field that human engineers had been building around the planet. It was not much protection against the Council fleet, but it might slow them down when the real fighting started. "Captain Webb," came a voice over his radio. "This is Mining Station 7. We have completed the modifications you requested." Marcus smiled inside his helmet. The mining stations had been converted into something the Council would not expect. They looked like simple industrial facilities, but hidden inside each one were banks of new missiles designed specifically to fight. Council ships. "Good work, 7. Remember, when the time comes, target their shield generators first. Our new plasma warheads should be able to punch through if we hit them in the right spot." The human weapons were smaller and weaker than Council technology, but they were also faster and more maneuverable. More importantly, they were designed by engineers who understood that sometimes winning meant thinking differently than your enemy on the Council flagship. High Arbiter Zeltherin met with the fleet commanders. The crystal being's light pulsed with irritation as it reviewed the latest reports. "The blockade has been in place for 3 months, it said to the assembled officers. "Why have the humans not surrendered?" Admiral Vaxnor, an insectoid being with multiple arms, clicked its mandibles nervously. "They seem to be using the time to prepare defenses, High Arbiter." Our scouts report unusual activity around their worlds. Defenses? The High Arbiter's voice rose in pitch. They have nothing that can threaten our fleet. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Perhaps, said another officer, a floating gas cloud being in a containment suit. But they are not behaving as predicted. Most species surrender within days of seeing our fleet. The High Arbiter moved to the viewing screen, where Earth hung like a blue jewel surrounded by the dark shapes of Council warships. Then we will demonstrate the futility of resistance. Order the pacification fleet to take position. We will occupy their primary world and end this nonsense once and for all. But as the Council ships began moving toward Earth, alarms started sounding throughout the fleet. Captain Webb and his fellow pilots had launched from hidden bases throughout the solar system, their small fighters swarming toward the massive Council vessels like angry insects. All units, this is Webb, he called over the radio. Remember, we are not trying to win a straight fight. We are buying time and showing them that humans do not give up easily. The Council ships opened fire with energy beams that could destroy a city, but the human fighters were too small and fast to hit easily. They darted between the massive warships, firing their new plasma missiles at shield generators and sensor arrays. Admiral Vexnor watched in confusion as the human attack unfolded. They are not trying to destroy our ships. What are they doing? Earth, the answer became clear as Elena Vasquez activated a planet-wide communication system. Her voice was broadcast not just to humanity, but to every Council ship in the system and beyond. People of the galaxy, she said, you are watching humanity's response to tyranny. We know we cannot defeat the Council fleet in open battle. But we can show you that resistance is possible. As she spoke, the human fighters continued their desperate dance around the Council ships. Some were destroyed by the massive energy weapons, but others kept coming, wave after wave of small ships, flown by pilots who refused to surrender. The Council tells you that their way is the only way, Elena continued. They say that order is more important than freedom, that safety is worth any price. But look at us now. We are outnumbered 1,000 to 1, yet we still fight. Why? Because some things are worth more than survival. On the Cathari homeworld, millions of cat-like beings stopped their assigned work to listen to Elena's words. In the aquatic cities of the Dalvani, swimmers broke their synchronized patterns to gather around communication screens. Across the galaxy, species that had forgotten what defiance looked like watched humans choose death over submission. Captain Webb's fighter shook as a Council energy beam passed close enough to melt his wing armor. His fuel was running low and his missiles were gone, but he kept flying. Around him, the human fleet was being systematically destroyed, but they had accomplished something important. All fighters, he called over the radio, we have shown them what humans are made of. Now let us show them how humans die. But before the last human ships could be destroyed, something unexpected happened. A new fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system. The ships were different from both human and Council designs, and they moved with the fluid grace of living things. Admiral, Lieutenant Torres called out in amazement, we are receiving a transmission from the new fleet. They say they are the Free Cathari Navy, and they are here to assist humanity. Admiral Sarah Kim stared at the screens in disbelief. How many ships? 50, ma'am. Not enough to turn the tide, but enough to make a statement. As the Cathari ships engaged the Council fleet, more new arrivals appeared. Ships from the Dalvani Resistance, vessels from species that Elena had never heard of. Each fleet was small, but together they represented something the galaxy had not seen in 3,000 years, a rebellion High Arbiter Zeltherin watched, its perfect fleet being harassed by dozens of different species, each fighting in their own style, each proving that the Council's control was not as absolute as it had believed. Order the fleet to withdraw, it commanded, its crystal body pulsing with frustrated anger. We will return with reinforcements. As the Council ships pulled back to a safe distance, Elena finished her broadcast with words that would echo across the galaxy for generations. To every species watching this, remember that you have a choice. You can accept the Council's comfortable cage, or you can choose to be free. It will not be easy. You will face hardship, danger, and possibly death. But you will face it as yourselves, not as shadows of what you once were. The siege of Earth had failed, but the real war was just beginning. Across the galaxy, beings who had forgotten how to hope were remembering how to rebel. And humanity, the species that had walked away from the galaxy's table, had become the spark that would light a fire of freedom among the stars. 5 years had passed since humanity walked out of the council chamber. Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the Freedom Station, looking out at a sight that would have been impossible to imagine just a few years ago. Ships from 43 different species moved through space around the station, all flying under the banner of the Independent Worlds Alliance. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Built from designs shared freely between species, it combined the best ideas from dozens of different civilizations. Cathari artistic curves merged with human practical angles. Dalvani flowing lines mixed with Vrex geometric precision. It was beautiful not because it followed one perfect design, but because it celebrated the differences between its creators. "Ambassador Vasquez," called a familiar voice behind her. Elena turned to see Cathvarney, the Cathari who had first whispered warnings to her at the council station. The cat-like being now served as the Alliance's Minister of Cultural Preservation. "Cathvarney," Elena smiled. "How are the new arrivals settling in?" "Better than expected." The Zilfan refugees brought their music crystals with them. For the first time in 800 years, their songs are being heard again without council modification. Elena nodded. The Zilfan were the latest species to break free from council control, fleeing their homeworld when the council tried to force them into complete cultural uniformity. Like many species, they had discovered that freedom was worth the risk of starting over. In the Alliance Communication Center, Dr. Chen monitored reports from across the galaxy. The picture they painted would have terrified the council leaders if they were willing to see it clearly. Nearly half of the council's member species were now in some form of rebellion. Some had declared complete independence, while others engaged in passive resistance that made council rule increasingly difficult. "Elena," Dr. Chen called as she entered the center. "We just received a priority message from Earth. President Martinez wants you to see this immediately." The message was from an unexpected source. High Arbiter Zaltherin itself, speaking not from the council station but from a simple communication room with no decorations or symbols of power. "Ambassador Vasquez," the crystal being's voice was different now, lacking the absolute certainty it had once carried. "The council requests negotiations with the Independent Worlds Alliance. We wish to discuss terms for peaceful coexistence." Elena stared at the message for a long moment before responding. "Dr. Chun, how many council members are still actively loyal to the old system?" "Our intelligence suggests fewer than 400 species, down from the original 847. The rest have either joined us, declared neutrality, or are in active rebellion." Captain Kim, now Admiral of the Alliance Defense Force, entered the room with a satisfied expression. "The Council just pulled their remaining fleet back to the core systems. They are not strong enough to maintain their blockades anymore." Elena considered this information carefully. "Send a reply to the High Arbiter. Tell them we are willing to meet, but only as equals. No demands, no ultimatums, no compliance packages. If they want to talk, they talk to us as one free alliance to another." The meeting took place 3 weeks later on a neutral space station in the Outer Rim. Elena led the Alliance delegation, which included representatives from 20 different species. The Council sent only 3 beings, including the High Arbiter, and they looked smaller somehow, less imposing than they had 5 years ago. "High Arbiter," Elena said as they sat around a circular table, designed so that no one position was more important than another. "You requested this meeting. What do you wish to discuss?" The crystal being's lights pulsed slowly. "The galaxy has become ... chaotic since your species refused membership. War has broken out in 17 systems. Trade routes are disrupted. Species that were peaceful for centuries are now fighting each other? Freedom is messy, Elena agreed. But it is still freedom. Many beings are suffering, the High Arbiter continued. The council system prevented conflict, ensured prosperity, maintained order. Keth Varney leaned forward. The council system prevented growth, creativity, and choice. You traded our souls for stability. We saved you from yourselves, the High Arbiter said, but its voice lacked conviction. Elena shook her head. You saved us from living. There is a difference. One of the other council representatives, a gas form being in a containment suit, spoke. For the first time, what would you have us do? Simply abandon 3,000 years of civilization? Let chaos consume the galaxy? Learn to live with chaos, said Admiral Kim. Learn to trust beings to make their own choices, even when those choices are wrong. Elena pulled out a data pad and placed it on the table. We have a proposal. The Alliance is willing to work with the Council on a new model of galactic cooperation, no forced membership, no compliance packages, no genetic modifications. Species work together because they choose to, not because they are forced to. The High Arbiter studied the document, its lights flickering with uncertainty. And if species choose poorly? If they go to war, destroy themselves, waste resources? Then they learn from their mistakes, Elena said simply. Or they do not, and they face the consequences, but they face them as themselves. This is not the Council way, the High Arbiter said. No, Elena agreed, it is not. The question is whether the Council is willing to learn a new way. The negotiations continued for days. In the end, they reached an agreement that would have been unthinkable 5 years earlier. The Council would transform from a governing body into a voluntary coordination network. Species could join or leave freely. No more forced relocations, no more genetic modifications, no more compliance packages. The High Arbiter signed the agreement. With what might have been reluctance, but it signed nonetheless. As the ceremony concluded, it approached Elena privately. You have destroyed everything we built, it said quietly. Elena looked at the crystal being with something approaching sympathy. We have given you the chance to build something better. Whether you take that chance is up to you. 6 months later, Elena stood once again on the observation deck of Freedom Station. The view had changed dramatically. The Alliance now included over 200 species, each contributing their unique skills and perspectives to the growing Confederation. Trade flowed freely between worlds. Art, music, and literature that had been suppressed for millennia flourished again. It was not perfect. There had been conflicts, mistakes, and misunderstandings. Some species had chosen poorly and faced the consequences. But they had chosen, and that made all the difference. Dr. Chun joined her at the viewing window. The latest reports from the former Council worlds are encouraging. Cultural production is up 300%. Scientific innovation has increased dramatically. Even the crime rates are dropping as beings rediscover purpose in their lives. And the problems? Elena asked because she knew there were always problems. Border disputes between the Nexari and the Volthan, resource conflicts in the outer spiral, a few species that are struggling to adapt to freedom after so many generations of control. Elena nodded, but they are their problems to solve. Through the great windows of the station, ships from dozens of worlds continued their endless dance through space. Each one flew under its own flag, representing its own choices and its own path through the galaxy. Some would succeed, others would fail, but all would do so as themselves. A young communication officer approached them. Ambassador, we just received a message from Earth. Another species is requesting Alliance membership. The Andromedans from outside our galaxy. They say they heard about our revolution and want to learn about freedom. Elena smiled. The message was spreading beyond even their own galaxy now. Somewhere among the stars, beings were learning that they did not have to accept cages, no matter how comfortable those cages might be. Send them coordinates for Freedom Station, she said, and let them know that they are welcome to join us, but only if they choose to freely. As the officer hurried away, Elena looked out at the stars one more time. Humanity had walked away from the galaxy's table 5 years ago, refusing to trade their freedom for security. That choice had sparked a revolution that transformed the entire galaxy. Now, beings across countless worlds lived free to choose their own paths, make their own mistakes, and create their own futures. It was chaotic, sometimes dangerous, and never certain. It was also the most beautiful thing Elena had ever seen.